Well, I'm somebody in Jesus. You can't talk about me no more. Well, let me tell you why. Now listen, y'all. You see, when I think about my life, when I truly met Jesus, well, you might say, boy, you've been in the church all your poor life. But when I truly met Jesus, my friends start talking about me. That's when I smiled and said this. Hey, you say you know all about me. You better think again. And you say that you know all about my past. But all have seen. See, I've been changed by the blood of the Lamb, and He's made me whole again. Well, I'm somebody in Jesus. Jesus, He washed away my sins. Let me tell you, I'm somebody in Jesus. You can't talk about me no more. Well, let me tell you, I'm somebody in Jesus. You can't hurt me no more, because now I've been renewed, church, and my soul has been clean. Let me tell you, I'm somebody in Jesus. Because now I need a gospel preacher to step up to the mic and tell us about the church is full of sanctified souls. Ooh, we're lost in this old world of sin. We were liars, cheaters, backstabbers, living in a world of fear. Till the preacher came and showed us the way. Now we are saved by amazing grace. You too can be somebody in Jesus. If you will trust and obey, let me tell you I'm a somebody. You can't talk about me no more. Hey, I'm somebody. You can't hurt me no more. No more, for I've been rich. My soul has been. Let me tell you I'm somebody in Jesus. Lord, because I've been redeemed. I'm somebody. Yes, I am. I'm somebody. Somebody, y'all. Let me tell you how I became somebody. I heard the word. I believe what I heard. Made up my mind to change my directions. I repented of all of my sins. I didn't mind letting the world know. I'll confess Jesus because He is my King. And at that time, y'all, I was ready to go down in the water, y'all. And that means when I came up, I was somebody. When I came up, I was somebody. I'm a child of God. I'm a child of King Jesus. I can walk right. I can talk right. I can sing right. He gave me a new song to sing. He gave me a new prayer to pray. Yes, He did. Yeah. You can't talk about me no more. But let me tell you, I'm somebody. You can't hurt me no more. Because now I've been renewed. Oh, Lord, in my soul. Let me tell you, I'm somebody. I need some help, y'all. Somebody in Jesus. I've been changed sanctified in Jesus. Oh yes, when you talk about me, just don't hurt like it used to. I found myself
a phenomenal woman. And the reason why she is phenomenal is because every time I see her, she lets me know that this too shall pass.
Amen.
And if God brought you to it, he can bring you through it. I'm going to introduce to you a phenomenal woman that's going to give us our opening prayer, Alditra Thompson.
Amen. Amen.
Let us pray. Our Father, we come to you this morning. Thank you for this beautiful day, Father, and all these beautiful ladies, Father. We thank you for this program on this morning. We ask you, Father, to bless the speaker and bless everybody. I love to praise him. I love to praise his name. I love to praise him. I love to praise him. You stop the flavor our food and make it taste right. So are we with his word to bring to the world his seasoning and his life. If we fail to do so, then we are no longer unto God a sweet-smelling Savior. And we'll no longer be a light to the world, for we have lost our faith.
You didn't hear that. It said Matthew 5, verse 13. And it reads, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has lost its Savior, where shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out and to be trodden." Here you have cards, okay? Inside of these greeting cards are scriptures, okay? What you will do. When the angels of death shall no longer destroy, and the dead shall awaken in the morning.
Just say just a quick note for myself to her, to let her know the first day I met her and up until this day, she has been the same. So many times you meet people and they are one way in one circumstance or environment, and when you meet them in another circumstance and environment, they may change colors on you. But this individual has always been a leader. She has always been a phenomenal speaker herself. She has always been the example of what a true wife of a pastor or minister should look like. I wanted to introduce to some and make known to others and introduce Miss Tanya Smith to introduce our speaker.
So I know Sharon for a long time. We worked together at the organization long before I met Lonnie. So it's really important to, as she said, always do the same. So I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker, Miss JONEE Lewis. And I want to say something about JONEE before I read her bio. JONEE is a great example of what a Christian should be. JONEE works at WXI. She's one of the anchors there. She's one of the weekend anchors. And during the week, you'll see her out reporting. But the thing that's so funny about JONEE is that on Wednesday nights, before we're coming to church, you look up and you see JONEE in Greensboro. And you're like, well, she's not going to make it to church. And sure enough, when Bible school starts, you see a little blue coat coming running through the door. Yep. Even on Sundays, if she's got to work, you will see JONEE sitting in that back seat. So she doesn't, I shouldn't say the back seat, that's the back seat, but that's important. But the thing about JONEE is that she doesn't let that be an excuse. And for some people, that would be an excuse not to come to church. JONEE does not let that stop her from coming to church. We are grateful to have JONEE as a member of the Eastside family. And she has jumped right in, she's fit right in, she's just like she's been here forever. So we do appreciate that, and you are setting a great example for others, whether you know it or not. introduces others, Ms. JONEE Lewis.
So good to see everybody. Y'all look so good. It's just been such a good atmosphere. And so I'm definitely glad to be here, glad to be speaking. You know, all week I'm like, got the ladies' day on Saturday. I'm so excited. Got to get ready. And the devil's just been real busy. So it's even more special to just be here, see your smiling faces, listen to the scriptures, and talk about different activities. And I hope that everyone, when I'm around you guys, I feel your energy. I leave feeling encouraged. I leave feeling better. So I hope that you all eat salty. Well, that depends on your perspective of it, because salt can be used for a lot of different purposes. You know, we have table salt. We use that to season our foods. Some of y'all, I see y'all, before you even eat, you put salt on. You don't know what it tastes like, but you put salt and pepper on it. Salt can also be used, which I've learned since being here, to melt ice and snow. I've had to buy some salt for that. I was not thrilled about it, so I hope this winter is a little nicer to me. You have salt to go on pretzels. It's a coarse salt, but the point is that, you know, salt has different purposes. Sometimes it's used to describe a person. Hopefully not your sister in Christ, but there are some salty people out there. But today we are going to talk about what God says when He wants us to be the salt. And when He calls us the salt of the earth, what does that mean to us? And so it was read earlier, but I'm going to read it again. And this is going to be from the easy to read version. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its taste, it cannot be made salty again. Salt is useless. If it loses its salty taste, it will be thrown out, or people will just walk on it. You are the light of the world, a city that is set on a hill and to use. We know, of course, it's used to flavor foods, it's used to enhance, it's used to bring out the flavor. We consider salt, I mean, we can go to the store and you can get salt for pretty cheap, so we don't really value salt because in our time it's a common commodity. You know, it's something very easily accessible to us, it's something that we can get, but that wasn't the case during ancient times. If you actually, I did a little research to figure out where the word salt comes from. It comes from the Latin word salarium, which has the root of sal, or the root of salt. In ancient times, Roman soldiers were actually paid in salt. That is how valuable salt was during this time, because it really was just used for everything. It was in every part of everything that they did. So that's where the phrase "not worth his salt" came from, because Roman soldiers kind of bartered and they were paid with salt. So during the course of this lesson, I hope that we think about if we're worth our salt. Salt was also used during covenants. This is taken from Leviticus 2:13, if you guys want to go to that scripture. And every oblation of thy meal offering, salt thou season with salt. Neither shalt thou suffer the salt of the covenant of thy God to be lacking from thy meal offering. With all thine oblations thou shalt offer salt. So Leviticus, if you remember, that's taken from the worship book. So during that time, there was a lot of talk about offerings. There was a lot of talk about sacrifices. At every single sacrifice and new covenant, salt was present. It was almost kind of like, you know, if you make a deal with someone and I come and shake your hand, like, that's giving you my word, that's giving you my bond. That was the significance of salt. So if salt was present, that's just as good as signing a contract in the Levitical time. It was an emblem of an everlasting covenant. How many of you guys, you know, have been to a wedding where there's salt? There's the unity of the salt. That's the reason for that, because it signifies that everlasting covenant, going back to the purpose, the meaning, and the value of salt. So, what does the Bible say about salt? Salt is actually used 41 different times in the Old and the New Testament. So I pulled some of those scriptures to kind of just expound upon what we're talking about. Colossians 4:6, let your speech always be with grace, as though seasoned with salt, so that you will know how you should respond to every person. So when we talk about salt, we say that salt is a preservative from corruption, from things spoiling, from things going bad. So this means that our speech should be the same way. When we speak about people, we should be blessing them. We should be having a purifying impact in our society. So that includes, at work. Are you one of the people that, they know they can come to you and get all the gossip? At school, are you saying words to uplift your classmates, or are you kind of known as the snarky person? In, our neighborhoods, out in the community, and on social media. A lot of y'all got Facebook, and sometimes you get upset about something that happened, and you go put up a Facebook post. Saying how you feel. And that's not even the entertaining part. The entertaining part is the comments. People come in and they're going to co-sign with you. So we really have to be careful about our speech. And I feel like, social media now and technology is such a big thing that once you put something out there, you can't get it back. Even if you deleted it. And that's a lesson that they really teach in my field. Because we're so out there, we really have to be careful what we say. There are a lot of people that are working in the profession now, doing well, something that they posted on social media back in college 5 years ago, getting pulled up, and they're losing their job for it. So if it's that serious in the world, and if it's that serious to our employers about our speech, how serious is it going to be to God? Mark 9:50, which it just expounds upon what we said. Salt is good, but if it loses its salty taste, you can't make it good again. So don't lose that good quality of salt you have. Live in peace with one another. So to keep the world in a, quote, healthy state, we have to be the salt. Salt is pure. Salt purifies. We talk about it's used for babies, it's used on wounds, it's used for toothache. These are all ancient uses of it. So how can we season the world? Well, we do it through our lives. And so people are like, okay, well, how do I know how to be the salt? Through God's word. Everything that we need to know about being the salt, how to be the salt, how to be flavor in other people's lives is through the word. So we have to keep that in mind. So we kind of talked about, the uses for salt, why it's so important. I mean, it's a metaphor, so what should it mean to us? I don't need everyone to hear me say I'm a Christian, but I need everyone to see Christ in me. How many times, have you told people that you're a Christian, and then you go and do something, and they're like, I thought you said you were a Christian. People are closely watching what we do, and the preacher in Myrtle Beach often said, sometimes you're the only Bible that people will read. So there are going to be people that, they don't know anything about the Church of Christ. They don't know anything about you, but they're watching you. They're watching you to see how you handle yourself. They're watching you to see, even in the grocery store, something as small as, I've been guilty of it myself, picking up something and just putting it back in the aisle because you got to go. But people are watching those little things, and those little things are really what separate us and make us to be the salt and make us to be the light. They set us apart, and so they distinguish us. So just remember that, no matter what you say, people are watching what you do. So note that for salt to be effective, it's not good if I just have salt in my hand. It's not going to do anything. It needs to come in contact with the meat. It needs to come in contact with something else in order to be active, in order to be effective. So to be effective, we have to get the salt out of the shaker. We have to be active, and we have to be involved in our church first. We have to be involved in our community. We have to be involved in our schools. We have to be involved in our jobs. We have to get the salt out of the shaker. So I've heard a lot of people, just talking about the world today. It's scary. It is a scary place, and a lot of people don't have hope. They don't have hope, and they can't see beyond what's going on right in front of them because they don't have hope. And so a lot of people's lives are, you know, they're just dull, they're blah, it's lacking flavor. And so when we think about that, we have to think about what is supposed to be the good in the world. Who is supposed to be the good in the world? That's us. So that means we got to work even harder to be the salt and to be the light to people who are in need. And I wanted to just kind of pull up some statistics and things to go over to really show like the state of the world that we're living in. I know this first one, you know, we talked about it here. It's impacted some of the youth here, some of their friends, some of their classmates have either committed suicide or tried to commit suicide this year. And I can't wrap my head around an elementary school student trying to commit suicide. You're supposed to be innocent, no problems, no cares. That's the kind of world that we're living in. One suicide occurs every 13 minutes. So think about it. If we're here for 4 hours, that's for an hour. In 2015, you know, we talked about this opioid overdose. It's all over the news. It knows no race. It knows no age. It knows no gender. It knows no socioeconomic status. It's impacting everybody. 30,000 people died in 2015 from overdose deaths. To the young adults and the young kids that we have here, 20% of kids have personally experienced bullying. So there's a young person in here that has personally this year been bullied. More than 1 in 3 have experienced cyber threats online. 25% of adolescents and teens say they've been bullied repeatedly through their cell phone or through some kind of social media site. So this is what really, because, you know, social media is just growing so much, is something that we really got to be mindful of. We really got to teach and talk to our young people about, because a lot of times these things are going on and they don't want to talk about it because it's kind of taboo, or it's not something that they feel like they can bring up in the church, or they feel like they're just going to be told, just pray about it. But sometimes you need more. You need to do more. You need to say more. So that's why I kind of really wanted to show this, because the world is in a dire state. It's in a rotten state. And so when we look at that, I hope that we don't lose hope. I hope that we look at that and we feel motivated and we feel like we do have hope. Because we have hope, because we know that no matter what we go through, God is with us. No matter what happens to us, it's going to work out for our good, and even if somebody meant it for our evil. So we should want to share that with other people, because we want to give them hope. Society and the world is spoiling because they're not coming into contact with enough salt. So as Christians, as followers of Christ, as disciples, we have to be the salt. We have to be flavorful people. Like, we're not supposed to blend in. And, you know, sometimes I've been guilty of that, you know, trying to blend in and, you know, just kind of go with the flow, go with the status quo, because you don't want to be confrontational. You don't want to perceive as you're being defensive or you're being difficult. You know, the big criticism of Christians is that, oh, we're too we're judgmental. And so sometimes to avoid that, I'll just be quiet, even though I feel like I should bring a zest. It should bring flavor to other people's life. There should be something different about you, different about the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you dress, the way you speak, think, how you handle your relationships. There should be something different about you. So don't feel bad if you are different or if people, you know, try to call you out for that. That's how you were designed. That's the way that you're supposed to be. So when we think about what it means to be the salt, it all boils down to one word: influence. Whether you realize it or not, you're influencing someone. So it's whether you're influencing them to do good or whether you're influencing them to do otherwise. Because we're all influential people. You know, some people say, oh, well, you know, I don't have a title, or I'm not teaching, so I'm not really an influential person. You are, because there's always someone looking to see how you handle yourself in church, whether if it's, we have a visitor come. Are you going to go speak and embrace that visitor? Or are you going to tell them that they're in your seat? And when I first came here and I visited several congregations, I actually had that done to me. And so, it wasn't here. So thankfully though, I am a strong enough Christian and I was taught that I didn't let that deter me. I kept seeking to try to find a church home, but how many people don't have the foundation that we have? And that one small thing could make them say, I'm never going back to a Church of Christ again.
Right.
That is the power of your influence.
Amen.
So, we just need to think about that. We need to think about how are we influencing, and if we have an influence. So, I am like a visual person, so I like to do illustrations. So, I need 2 volunteers, preferably people that don't have to figure out what she's eating, but you can't see it. It's apprehensive. Yeah. Yeah, she's eating mustard. That is Monique's child. Is that there? Yes. So, were you a little apprehensive not knowing what you were going to eat? But how were you able to figure out what it was? The taste and the flavor. Thank you. The part of it that she was able to figure it out is because every food item that she had, it had a distinct taste and it had a distinct flavor. So even though she couldn't see it, she was able to figure out what it was. But it would have been more helpful if she could see it, right? And that is why the salt and the light go hand in hand. And that is the significance of Jesus calling us the salt and the light, because we can't just be the salt here in this congregation during worship, and then when we go out, we're in the darkness. We're not being the light. So when talking about the salt, we have to talk about the light. We have to talk about how to be the light. So how do we make others thirst for Jesus? Salt stops corruption and decay. Salt stimulates thirst. Jesus calls us salt. Are we showing his light to a dying world? Is anyone thirsty for Christ because of our words? So let's talk about how to make others thirst for Jesus. What do we do with our salt? We know what the salt is. We know how to be salty. What do we do with it? It brings us to the other part of the verse that we read at the beginning. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill is not a title that he took for himself. Jesus referred to himself as the light. I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. That's John 8:12. In John 9:5, he says, as long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. So as long as we're here in this body and in this form, we need to be the light of the world. Jesus never challenged us to become the salt and the light. He simply said that we are. Once we got baptized and once we became Christians, we just are. So we just have to do. We just have to be. So looking at, if you want to turn, because this is kind of a long one, Ephesians 5:7-13. How do we go from coming out of darkness and to be the light of the world? Therefore, do not be partakers with them, for you were formerly darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. For the fruit of the light consists in all goodness and righteousness and truth, trying to learn what is pleasing to the Lord. Do not participate in the unfruitful deeds of darkness, but instead even expose them. For it is disgraceful even to speak of the things which are done by them in secret, but all things become visible when they are exposed by the light. For everything that becomes visible is light. How many times have you been told what's done in the dark always comes to light? It always happens. Even when I was young and I was trying to do sneaky stuff, I always got caught. Always. Because it always comes to light. So even if we are not living and being who we should be, we can think that we're fooling people, but we're not. And we are going to be exposed. So I definitely don't want to run the risk of being exposed. So it's easy to just be who you say you are and walk in the light. So some key notes about being the salt and the light. Salt and the light is distinction. Light is needed because the world is darkness, and we can't imitate darkness. So if we're comparing the salt and the light, they're in opposites of what God doesn't want us to do. So God tells us to walk in the light. Opposite of light is darkness. He doesn't want us to walk in the darkness. He specifically tells us to come out of the darkness. Salt is used for preservation. We live in a spoiling world. So either we're going to preserve the world or we're going to spoil with the world. We're supposed to be distinct. The things that happen in the world, they're common. That's why, a lot of people say they don't even want to watch the news because so much bad stuff is just becoming a common thing. It's just becoming a common occurrence. But we know that the lives that we live and the people that we are and the relationships that we have, we're supposed to be distinct. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. The reason why light is so important is because it gives us guidance. If we've lost our way, we can cling to God's word to guide us back home. That is the importance, and that is the distinction, and that is the significance of the light. So how do we, in our everyday life, how do we do this? How do we apply, because that's what we're supposed to do. That's the important part. Is we can go over scripture all day, but how do we apply this to our everyday life when we walk out of the door? How do we make that happen? The great part about the Bible, when we read and study it more, it explains itself. There's not a question in the Bible that you don't have an answer to. So if you look in the first part of Matthew 5, you have the Beatitudes, which explain how we're supposed to be the salt and how we're supposed to be the light. If we do these things, we will be the salt and will be the light. So if you want to go there, they're here, but it's Matthew 5, 3-10. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. This means that we are rich in faith. We are rich in the word, and we are devoid of all darkness. Think about the kind of person you would rather work with. Would you rather work with someone that's humble, or would you rather work with someone that's proud? When we're on committees in the congregation and we're doing teamwork, think about the kind of person that you want around you. Be that person. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. As Christians, we shouldn't be high-minded. We shouldn't think that we're above others. We shouldn't think that we're better than others, because we're all sinners. We've all made mistakes. We're just forgiven. And we just have a way to pray and ask for that forgiveness. So we should always carry that spirit with us. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. How can we make others hunger and thirst for Jesus if we don't have that desire ourselves? So we should always desire to be better, to grow, to learn, and to most importantly, learn from our mistakes. Because it doesn't say that we're not going to stumble. It doesn't say that we're not going to fall short. But being that we are the salt and the light, we have to learn from that and then use that to help other people not make the same mistakes that we made. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Do we show mercy and forgiveness to others when we've been wronged? And this is something that we're talking about on our Wednesday night Bible class is, how do you treat people who mistreat you? And it's definitely been helpful for me personally in helping me grow because as a Christian, there's some stuff that you're going to go through. And you're going to suffer. And sometimes you wonder, why am I going through this? How can I handle this? But this tells us what we should do. We should have mercy for those people. We should pray for those people because they don't have what we have. They don't have the hope that we have. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Christ's word is what keeps us pure. If we remain pure, our salt will remain pure. It will have its purity. It will have its flavor. It will have its influence. It will have the impact that it needs to have. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. How many times have we been in situations at work, school, church, where we've had to be a peacemaker? Especially in today's times, very trying times. So we definitely need more peacemakers and not people running out adding fuel and fanning the flames and fanning the fire. When you have a situation that happens to you and you handle it, mercifully, you're forgiving, you're a peacemaker, someone's going to come to you and say, I don't know how you did that. And that's an opportunity for you to explain how and why, and that could potentially lead to a study or them wanting to just come out to church. But this is why I say, if we're the salt and the light, this is the way that we really grow the church. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Jesus was the salt and the light, and you have to understand, sometimes people are just not going to like you for taking the stand that you take. And so that's just something that you have to realize, that not everybody is going to like what you're doing. I mean, look at Jesus. He came and walked this earth. He's perfect. And they didn't like him. They persecuted him. They mocked him. They beat him. And ultimately nailed him on the cross. So we know that because of what he went through, we're going to go through stuff too. But we should look to him and look at him as an example to know that whatever we go through, we can make it through because we have a Savior who's already gone through it. John 15:19. If you belong to the world will love you as it loves its own people. I have chosen you to be different from those in the world, so you don't belong to the world. And this is why the world hates you. That's from John 15:19. So we just have to remember that, in our day-to-day lives, when we're at work, when we're at school, and it just feels like, sometimes you're like, it just may be easier just to give up on this walk and just be a part of the world. It's not going to be easier on Judgment Day. So we just have to let that be our motivation and keep that in mind. It won't be easy then. So obviously, since this is geared towards ladies, I wanted to pull from some women in the Bible who were the salt and the light in their particular circumstances. Esther. Everybody knows about Esther. She was beautiful. She was a queen. The name Esther means hidden. That's because her Jewish identity was hidden for many years. God put her in a position to be the queen of Persia, and she had to make the choice of whether or not to save her people. That was a tough choice because, going to approach the king, she could have been killed. And if you remember, when Mordecai spoke to her, he said, maybe God put you in a position for such a time as this. So how many times have we, been in situations and we don't understand it, or, changes at our job, we've been moved to a different position or a different role, and we don't really understand why this is happening. And then way, way, way down the road, it makes sense. This was the situation with Esther. So she had to decide if she was going to take a stand or if she was going to be silent. So in our lives, there will sometimes come a time where we have to decide, okay, in this moment, am I going to take a stand or am I going to be silent? We saw what Esther did, and we saw how it saved her people. It didn't cost her her life because she trusted God. She trusted God was going to be with her, God was going to provide for her, God was going to take care of her, and it worked out. Lois and Eunice, the mother and grandmother of Timothy, who we hear referred about for teaching Timothy the scriptures and being a positive influence in his life and his upbringing and helping him to build upon the foundation. They were both the salt and the light through their influence and teaching from a child. So I take that into our relationships, you know, not just in our family with our kids or grandkids, but I mean, there are lots of teachers in here. You know, you could be influencing, you could be the only salt and light that your students see in their whole lives. So that 6 to 8 hours that they're going to impact that you're having on them and in shaping them. So those that, you know, do choose to teach, you have to keep that in mind, that it's a great responsibility, whether it's outside of the church, whether it's in the confines of the church, to know that. I mean, look at how Timothy came out. So we see the impact that a solid foundation and good teaching can have on others. 2 Timothy 1:5, I remember your true faith. That kind of faith first belonged to your grandmother Lois and to your mother Eunice. I know you now have that same faith. So for those that have kids, if your kids mirrored your faith, how strong would they be? That was truly an example of courage and faith. She hid the spies to save her family. But let's think about Rahab, who she was as a person. In that society, she was considered the lowest of the low. And look at how God used her. So I just think the Bible is so great in that we see all of these great leaders and great people. They had flaws. They made mistakes. They killed, stole, lied, cheated. But God still used them. So I say that to say to us, you know, a lot of people, I've been guilty of it myself, you know, we make a mistake. The devil wants you to feel guilty about it and to carry that weight and to feel like you're not good enough. You know, you can't serve. You don't know enough. But look at how God used Rahab. No matter where we came from, what we've been through, what mistakes we made, God can still use us. And sometimes He will use what we went through to help others.
Amen.
So don't be discouraged, you know, if something keeps tripping you up, or, you know, you're like, you know, I've been a Christian for X amount of years and this thing is still getting me. God is still working on you, through you, and He can still use you. Ruth, everyone knows about Ruth and Naomi. The theme of Ruth is a love story because it's all about love. This verse is a significant moment, and sometimes you'll hear it, you know, at weddings. For wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Ruth 1:16. So Ruth inspired someone else by her faithfulness, by her courage, by her character. You know, Naomi had lost everything that she had, everything and everyone that she had, and she became bitter. In which, you know, one would say that was rightfully so. But look at how Ruth influenced her, how she helped her through that by being the kind of woman that we should all strive to be. So that's just to say that, you know, even if you're surrounded by darkness, still be the light, because you don't know how what you're doing, even that little small gesture, or just going by that coworker and saying, you know, good morning, it's good to see you today. You don't know how that's going to change their day. You don't know maybe what they went through before they came to work, which is why they're the way they are, and your kind word can change their whole day, their whole mood, their whole demeanor, their whole perspective. In 1 Peter 3:1-2, it talks about wives winning over husbands with their conduct. But that can apply to any relationship, because like we said, you know, sometimes you're going to be the only interaction with Christianity that people have. So, you know, when we're in school and we're in our classrooms, you know, how are we behaving ourselves? When, you know, we're at work and there's a difficult day or there's a difficult person, because, you know, every place there's a difficult person. And usually you got to work with them or deal with them on a regular basis, because God will test you. So how do we handle that person? You know, especially in what we do, because we're so public. People will send all sorts of hateful emails, and they will leave hateful comments on your pages. And so it's really a challenge and a test to respond gracefully, season your speech with grace with these people, and be the salt and the light. And oftentimes you just have to remember, you have to kill them with kindness. You know, if you say a kind word, what can they say back to that? It may be hard, and sometimes, you know, if you're still working on that, it may be good just not say anything. Get your thoughts together. But if you can say a kind word, definitely do say a kind word. So, how do we get the salt out of the shaker? What we need to know, one, is that when Jesus called us the salt, it was with a purpose. Salt is not sweet. Salt sometimes bites, it sometimes hurts. When you pour it on the wound, you're going to feel it. So sometimes you may be in difficult situations and you may have to say things that they're going to hurt. And so you just have to know that it's not always going to be sweet when you're being the salt. So we need to be the salt in our friendships. We need to be the salt in our workplace. We need to be the salt in our congregation. I use the picture of Eastside because we really need to be the salt where we worship. You know, we need to have the heart and mind of willing to serve. I think today is such a great example. You know, everywhere you go, you come in, there's just sisters from this congregation serving in every way. Praying, writing poems, doing the door prizes, getting the food together. You know, the food today is catered by a sister here in this congregation. So a lot of sisters here are being the salt, and they are working, and they are being the light. We can't be a camouflage Christian. You know those people that they change around every group of people that they're with. You know, if you like this type of show when they're with them, girl, I like that show too. And then if they're with somebody else, no, I don't like that. We don't want to be a camouflage Christian, meaning that we kind of just blend in with whatever environment we're in. We don't want to be that. We want to be, like we talked about earlier, we want to be distinct. We want to be different. We want to be unique. We want to get the salt out of the shaker. And the reason I use this picture and I use in talking about the church is because if you look at the parable of the leaven, Matthew 13:33, kingdom of heaven is like leaven. Leaven has a unique, you know, I don't bake, and I appreciate all of y'all that do bake because I really enjoy eating all of your baked goods. So I don't really bake, but those of you that bake, you know, like when you use yeast, what it does to the flour and what it does to your bread. It makes it rise. It makes it ferment. So you only need a little bit. I take that analogy to use for the church. We can have the same impact today. It doesn't take a lot, just a little bit. Just one small thing can be enough to permeate the world, to permeate the entire world, and to have the effect of the gospel. Because ultimately, what we want to do is lead others to Christ. So we know that if we are the salt and the light in just little small ways, I'm not asking you to do anything big, that can be enough to at least get someone to say, I'll come and I'll visit you and I'll worship with you. And they have the opportunity to hear the message, and that may lead to questions, that may lead to a Bible study. You know, once we get somebody in here, you know, everybody's going to, you know, be trying to get them to come back, trying to, you know, get them the Bible correspondence course, trying to teach them. So we just got to get them in the door. That's our part. If we get them in the door, we can have that difference. More people are brought to Christ by observing the Christian life as you live it than are converted through us just telling them what to do. How many times have you heard people say that? They don't just, having and reading the scriptures in the Bible is not just enough. They want to see it in action. And that's why I say everything that we talk about today, we have to apply it to our lives outside of this building. Because it's easy to be the salt in the congregation usually, because, you know, everyone around you is like you. We're like-minded. We have the same teaching. We have the same, generally speaking, understanding. But it's hard when you're, you know, out and you're facing these difficult conversations. So get the salt out of the shaker. So how do we do that today? What are some things that we can do to let our light shine? Create a gratitude journal. You know, a little small notebook. You can start your day or you can end your day. 5 minutes of just putting down things that you are thankful for. If you do that, it will put you in a thankful state. It will make you more content with the things that you have. You'll do a little bit less comparing yourself to others and comparing yourself to what they have, because when you start naming things, you realize, you know, I'm blessed. Random acts of kindness. Try complimenting the first 3 people you see each day. Just give them a kind word and see how that impacts, see what their response is, how that impacts their day, and when we do good, it will have that same impact on us. Positive sticky notes. I love sticky notes because I like to have my little list, and I just like to put words of encouragement. You know, leave little sticky notes around the office, put a sticky note on someone's car, put a sticky note in the songbook. You know, maybe someone is having a rough time, or they had a rough morning, and they open up and they see that note of encouragement, they see that positive affirmation. You don't know what that will do for them. Volunteer. You know, get out. That goes to just getting out and being involved in your community. When people see you, you know, I see the youth, you guys do such a good job of going out into the community and volunteering and doing different things. You know, when we had the school supply drive here at the beginning of the year, people just from the neighborhood were just coming in, wanting to see what we had going on. And then some of those people wanted to come back and visit because of our kindness, because they got to see us in a setting outside of this building, outside of the church, outside of the worship. And they were impressed with who we were outside of the worship, and that made them want to come in the worship. A coupon fairy. I don't know if you guys are couponers, but if you are, you know, you can cut out coupons and place it in the store by the item that the coupon is for. So if it's for, like, you have a coupon for laundry detergent, or you have a coupon for a food item that you're not going to use, put the coupon on. I've seen that happen, actually, and it made my day. So you can make someone else's day. The point is, there are a lot of little things that we can do in the way we behave and the way we carry ourselves. Little small things. I mean, these things don't cost you any money. You know, it doesn't matter if you know, work, if you don't work, if you're on a fixed income, if you have pen and paper, if you have a mouth to speak, you can go out and you can do these little things so that we let our light so shine before men that they may see our good works and glorify our Father which is in heaven. Matthew 5:16. A holy life will produce the deepest impression. Lightness blows no horns. Lighthouses blow no horns. They only shine. Thank you.
Amen.
All right. Thank you again, JONEE Lewis. And next, we will have a song from Miss Linda Transu. Glory of the Lord shine. Let the glory of the Lord rise among us. Let the glory of the Lord rise among us. Let the praise of the King rise among us. Let it rise. Let it rise. Oh, let it rise.
You gave us a lot of good
Amen.
information.
Amen.
If you didn't learn anything today, you just were not paying attention. So, but some of the things that she said well, everything that you said stood out to me. But some of the things I'd like to reiterate, her first question was, are we worth our salt? That's something we need to think about. Are we worth our salt? Colossians 4:6, our speech. What's the thing that gets a lot of people in trouble? Our mouths, right? It's easy for us to, when we get aggravated, what do we want to tend to do? We want to react, right? We want to react. We want to say what we have to say, and you might feel good about it, but what's the problem? Once it's out, and you can't take it back. So sometimes, well, not sometimes, all the time, before you open your mouth, think, think. Sometimes you have to pause, and sometimes you just have to walk away, right? What is your influence like? How are you influencing people? I certainly hope nobody in this building right now has ever told a visitor that's my seat. Yeah, not good. So she was talking about somebody else. They aren't here. Nobody would ever do that in this building, right? Right. Don't do that. Don't do that. Because you can cause somebody to stumble. See, that's the other thing we don't think about. Some of the foolish things that we think about your influence at work. So I worked with Sharon in the past. If I had acted a fool at Aeon, I think sometimes we might make assumptions and we forget that God gives confidence. The first three people you see, the positive sticky notes.
885. 984.
This single mom has just come through a lot. She has her own business, which I absolutely applaud. Any woman that can run a business, raise a child, and still find time to be serving in church and being an absolute wonderful example of what a single mother Christian woman looks like. I would like to introduce to you for the presentation of gifts, Miss Monique Parks. Because I didn't know you were talking about me first. So I am here to do the presentation of gifts, and I did write a little something because I couldn't say it. I had to make sure I had it. And I get half of whatever you have in the card.
Okay. Okay, I want to open it.
Oh, goody. Runs very smoothly. She freely gives her time to make sure our young children have a lesson in conjunction with our Ladies' Day programs. Norma has set to make this. She has set to make these accommodations for several years, and we greatly appreciate you for your time.
Sometimes, Lord, we don't realize how blessed we are, but we will take this time just to say that. We pray for the sick and shedding, and Lord, those who wanted to come this morning, but they couldn't make it. And we thank you, oh God, for all that you've done for us.
Let me tell you I'm somebody in Jesus. You can't talk about me no more. Well, let me tell you I'm somebody in Jesus. You can't hurt me no more, because now I've been renewed, church, and my soul has been clean. Let me tell you I'm somebody in Jesus. Because now I need a gospel preacher to step up to the mic and tell us about the church is full of sanctified souls who were lost in this old world of sin. We were liars, cheaters, backstabbers, living in a world of peril. Till the preacher came and showed us the way. Now we are saved by amazing grace. You too can be somebody in Jesus. If you will trust and obey, let me tell you I'm a somebody. You can't talk about me no more. Hey, I'm somebody. You can't hurt me no more. No more, for I've been reached. My soul has been. Let me tell you I'm somebody in Jesus, Lord, because I've been redeemed. I'm somebody. Yes, I am. I'm somebody, y'all. Let me tell you. Let me tell you how I became somebody. I heard the word. I believed what I heard. Made up my mind to change my directions. I repented of all of my sins. I didn't mind letting the world know. I'll confess Jesus, because he is my king. And at that time, y'all, I was ready to go down in the water, y'all. And that means when I came up, I was somebody. When I came up, I was somebody. I'm a child of God. I'm a child of King Jesus. I can walk right, I can talk right, I can sing right.